Hi, I'm Mark Olesh, and this is my KW story.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's My KW Story. We have a Keller Williams legend with us today, Mark Olesh, Regional Director of South Florida Region, and he is going to tell us all about how he ended up at Keller Williams and how he became a regional director for the last 17 years. So quite a reign as regional director. Mark, you've got a really interesting place that you came from and kind of how you ended up at Keller Williams. Let's just start there and tell everybody about what your world looked like prior to real estate, because you were literally way out in left field from that.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I grew up probably like a lot of kids playing ball in the street in my neighborhood. And what developed out of that time, where we always played either baseball, basketball, or football in the street, was a love for sports. And all I ever wanted to do, Liz, growing up, was do sportscasting, be a sportscaster, and cover the Rose Bowl. And that was never anything my parents had to coach me about, ask me about, what do you want to do? I knew from the time I was 5 years old, that's all I wanted to do. So I headed off in the direction of sports and TV journalism.
That's very cool. So you got out of school, you turned into an adult, and you're saying, I'm going into sports, TV journalism. Where in the world did you do this? Like where did this take you?
So I went to San Diego State, which our biggest moment is right here. We made a shot in the Final Four last year, so I'm still close to my heart. But I went to San Diego State, and close to San Diego is a small town in Arizona. And our people from San Diego State started matriculating that way, and that's where I ended up going. And I started at a very small television station in Yuma, Arizona. And I went from Yuma to Central California. And in Central California, I actually finally did. I've got all this stuff up here. This is from the 1993 Rose Bowl game with Michigan and Washington. So
goals accomplished.
I hit the goal. Yeah, we covered a couple, 2-3 times, and it was a great time being on the field and shooting the game. It's the prettiest game in the world, the Rose Bowl. So I did that, and then from there I went to Austin, Texas, and I did a morning show in Austin. And at one point, I was doing sports while I was in Central California, and they asked me if I would do news. And I said, no, I really love sports. I'm good doing sports. And they said, just do it for a little bit. I said, what do you mean a little bit? Just do it for a week. So I said, all right, I'll try it for a week. And I realized, actually, this is pretty fun. So I did the evening news for about 2 or 3 years. And then from there, I did a morning show in Austin, Texas. When you're in Austin, because we have all our events in Austin, I still would go back to the station occasionally. I'd see people for years and years at KITV, Channel 42. I did that for 2 years. And I ended up out here as a sports guy. And I covered the Super Bowl and covered the Daytona 500. Unfortunately, when Dale Earnhardt crashed his car for the very last time, I was one of the guys out there in the winner's circle waiting for him to come across, and he never made it. But that was my career here in Tampa. And then I hit a wall myself because my contract was not renewed. And so I had to make a decision on where I wanted to go next.
So your contract wasn't renewed in what you had known your entire life you wanted to do. And that gave you a complete 90-degree turn. How did you end up in real estate?
Yeah, so it's funny, right? A lot of people probably listening have gone on a job search before. And for me, when I went on my job search, I thought I was trying. I thought I was doing everything I could, until one day, a couple of months in, my wife looked at me and she said, "You've quit." And I said, "What do you mean I've quit?" She said, "You're not even trying anymore." And of course, when you're looking for a job, you're always in a good mood. So I said, "Well, what would you like me to do, Miss Perfect?" And she said, "Listen," she said, "I can live with you doing any job in the world, but you've got to do something. Why don't you get a real estate license?" And I said, "A real estate license? I don't want to do real estate. Besides, that'll take forever." And she, like a great Keller Williams consultant, way before we even came to the company, said, "Well, how long do you think it'll take you?" I said, "I don't know. It's got to take months to get a real estate license." And she said, "Well, you're going to be alive and breathing 3 months from now." I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Why don't you be alive and breathing with a real estate license?" And that was it.
I got to meet her one day, Mark.
Yeah, it literally was a turning point where I said, she's actually right. And it actually didn't take me that long, because it only took 8 days to take the course. I took it in 8 straight days. I wasn't doing anything else. And I got into real estate, and I got into invest and just to maybe learn how it worked, because my parents had bought some investment properties. And because I landed at Keller Williams, it's just taken me down a road, an endless road of opportunity, which is what we say the company is. And that's just what I've taken advantage of, is the opportunity to present himself in this company.
So that was 2001 when your wife put you down the path of get your real estate license. You joined Keller Williams as a brand new agent, and yet you didn't stay in the agent role for very long. You were only in there, what, 18 months, maybe 24? What did your journey as an agent look like, and what was the next step?
It's funny, it doesn't seem like that long ago, Liz, but when I started, this was probably the worst place I could have started, because I'd only been on the air here a year. If I had started in Central California, everybody knew me. I was on for 8 years. If I'd started in Austin, I'd been on for 2.5, 3 years. I was on a regular morning show. I knew a lot of people. Here, in fact, I still have, this is my, if anyone remembers, this is the original IBM Selectric list of database people. That's it, 60 people. That's
One
all I had.
page.
And out of that group, I got 16 deals. So I just did what the MRE book tells you. Just start contacting your database, let them know you're there, do database, do open houses, and just be in activity. And I was really fortunate, I feel like, because I came into the Ubaldini group, which was here as the dominant team in the Palm Harbor and Tampa Bay area. And I figured out after a week or two, that guy Gary's taking all the listings. I ought to just shadow him and just do whatever he does. And he was nice enough to take me on a listing appointment. And in my first year, I capped and became an ALC member for the start of the second year, and the team leader resigned. So as soon as the team leader resigned in January of 03, Nikki called me about the team leader opportunity.
Now, when we were doing our pre-interview, you weren't really interested in the team leader opportunity, right? And you didn't even really weren't interested in real estate, yet you had a good first year. You were off to the start of a great second year. And now your OP, Nikki, is calling you and saying, Mark, I'd like to have this conversation with you, which you obviously took, but tell us about how you took that and how you realized this might be something you like, because I think that's really important for people to hear.
Well, yeah, because it was another huge turning point for me. I had gotten to the point where I had $1 million on the books in January of that year. I said, all you ever want to do when you get into real estate, right, is make $100,000 and then maybe make $1 million someday, but just get to 100,000, which at that time I was on track to do. And I said, I'm good. So I told Nikki, I am not at all interested in the team leader role. And she said, well, here's the thing. We have this process called career visioning. And what will happen is you'll go through this process and you'll either find out that you might actually really want to do it, even though you think you don't, or at the very least, I'll help you build your real estate team and you'll learn how to find talent. Now, knowing how successful Gary and Nikki had been in the real estate business in the first year that I was in the company, I said, well, I would be really foolish not to at least listen to what they're saying. So I took the first meeting and it was fun and it was fine. But I still, honestly, Liz, got up from that first meeting and thought, well, it's kind of flattering and it's kind of nice, but I'm not going to do this. I don't want to be employed. I don't want anyone telling me what to do. I like controlling my own thing, running my own thing, and I'll just go back to doing that. But I did agree to a second meeting. And on the second meeting, after we had gone through some of those pieces, I actually started to visualize, oh my gosh, this office has 95 agents. What if I could build it to 200 or 250, which at the time was a big office, right? And that's where I started. That second meeting was when it clicked in and I said, actually, you could impact even more lives if you led a big group. And that's the road I went down next.
I think it's so fascinating when you look at that you had no interest in it. You were actually against a corporate type of role and in doing that and having the boss and not doing your own thing. And then yet through the career visioning process, you were able to get to know yourself better and see the opportunity better to self-discover that actually this does sound like something I want, right? Which was a pivotal moment in your career because it ultimately led you to where you are. Now, how long did you stay in that team leader role?
I stayed in that role. I took it over. We had 125 agents actually in the office and 30 of them nobody had ever seen. So we went back down to about 90 or 95. And then we built it to about 225, 230 and about $500,000 profit. And that was from 03 to 07. And in 07, end of 06, Nikki said, why don't you come to a regional meeting with me? I want you to see what the regional director opportunity looks like.
Were you excited about that opportunity, Mark, to go to that meeting?
I was not. No. No, well, here's the thing that she says, look, you'll be there with Mark Willis and Mo Anderson and all these great people, which I started to know a little bit. So I was smart enough to know these are really great people. But I said, I don't want to go to a room and sit in a room for 3 days. And, it's hardcore stuff. And I don't want to do that. So she just come to the meeting. So I went to the meeting and I was in there for 3 days. And in those days, we were doing, like 8 a.m. till 7 o'clock at night. And they wheeled in breakfast and wheeled in lunch and nobody left the room. And it was great stuff and a lot to learn. But honestly, in the first meeting, Liz, I remember leaving that meeting and standing in the lobby with Nikki, and she said, "So what do you think? You want to do the regional director role?" I said, "Honestly, Nikki, I have no idea what you guys are doing in there." She said, "What do you mean? You're just in there for 3 days." I said, "I know, I don't get it. I don't understand the game in there. I just don't get it." So I said, I'm going to go back to be team leader. And I did. I was team leader for another 2-3 months. And they had another meeting. And she came to me and she said, "Hey, I want you to come to another meeting." And I said, "Oh, no, that thing we're in the room all day. And I don't want to do that." She would just come one more time. So here's the thing that was actually really interesting is in that next meeting, what happened was Mark Willis went to the board, to a whiteboard, and he started drawing out what a regional director would do. And I realized this company was built on the backs of pioneers like Gary and Nikki and Linda and Jimmy McKissick and Bob Kalinsky and Kay Evans and all these incredible people. But nobody really knew what the regional director should do. These great people were just doing it naturally. And as soon as they started drawing it out, I said, "Oh, now I see what the game is." And I would like to do that. So in January of 2007, I started as regional director in South Florida.
So you know what I learned during this interview so far, Mark, is that if you want Mark Olesh to take an opportunity, you got to get him to the second meeting.
The second meeting,
that's right. That's what I learned.
Yeah, you're right.
You got to get 2 meetings on you. Got it. So that was 2007, where you went to the second meeting. It clicked for you of, hey, this is something I want to do. This is an opportunity. Now, you've been in that role as the South Florida Regional Director for 17 years. That's a really long time and done quite well at it, obviously. What's your journey as the Regional Director looked like? And what have been some of the things you've learned and that you've seen in that role?
Yeah, all these journeys, you just learn so much. I remember, just to go back to the team leader role for a minute, I remember I was in there for like 2 weeks and the front desk quit. And I said to Nikki, "Hey, the front desk quit. You need to hire somebody." She goes, "No, that's you." I said, "What do you mean that's me? I thought I was teaching people how to sell real estate." She said, "No, and you hire all the people." I said, "Oh, I didn't know that." And it's kind of was that way in the regional director role, right? You take it over and you kind of think you know how the offices work because you've been at these meetings where there are 20 or 22 offices and you kind of think you know how stuff's laid out, but then you start to understand the back office side of all that and those pieces of how it works. When I started, there were 20 some odd offices and about 1,500 agents. Now we have 35 offices and 7,100 agents. And we still have lots more room to grow. As people know, Florida still is a massive opportunity for us. But I didn't go to college and get a business degree. All my roommates went to San Diego State for business because it's a big business school. I went there for television and journalism. And what I've learned in Keller Williams is you can get a great business degree if you just dive in and learn how the OP role works, what the relationships are like. Part of the reason it's been fun for me for so long is because we do have, Nikki started this with such a great group of leaders and fun people and truly Keller Williams cultured people. That's just been a fun ride to be able to work with those people and to work through those people.
I think that's a huge thing when you look at that is, you didn't go to get the business degree, and yet here you are as a regional director, leading so many offices, so many other leaders underneath you, so many agents, and you've taken other aspects in there where you've branched into teaching, facilitating, master faculty, leverage series instructor, the OP role, so many different hats that you've worn throughout your journey there. And that you also were reluctant to get into, but it sounds like Nikki got you on second meeting on those too.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
And now that's where your route takes you.
That's where the route takes you. And as it's grown, we've gone through different cycles in the marketplace. So when I started, it was 2007. And if you remember back in 2007, the real estate landscape was starting to shift dramatically, right? So we had offices really struggling and the whole dynamic. I was back in that situation where I thought I was going to help everyone build here. And now people are just trying to survive because this thing has gone sideways on everybody. So there was that cycle, and then we've seen hot cycles, and then it gets cold again a little bit, and then it's hot again. We just had a hot cycle, and now we're going into the cycle where it's cold. The great thing about the cold cycle at Keller Williams and in real estate is that's our biggest opportunity. When the market gets tough, that's when people see the value in everything that Gary has built and everything that all the great leaders in this company have put together for agents and leaders to leverage. And suddenly we have value again, and people want to learn how to survive and thrive through market changes like this. And that's really the most gratifying time.
Well, and that's when things begin. We take our unfair share of market, right? We take our unfair share because we've got the tools, the resources, and the leadership to get us there. So, Mark, if there was a moral of the story, right? The key thing, if you were to tie this all together about what your journey of the last 23 years looks like with Keller Williams, for those folks that are listening to and watching this video today, what would that be?
Yeah, it's interesting. My dad told me years ago, Liz, that if you're ever bored in life, it's your own fault because you've stopped learning. And what I realized when I look back, even to that time where I was in between jobs and my wife called me out on that, what she was really saying is you've stopped trying and you've stopped learning. And every time I've gotten into Keller Williams, the right time for the right opportunity has to kind of mesh. But as long as you're willing to keep learning, and we have so many great classes and so many great people to learn from, and it's the most marvelous professional environment I've ever been in because you can call almost anybody and they'll take your call and they'll share what they know. My message would be never stop learning and never stop exploring the opportunities, even if it takes you 2 meetings, because there's usually a golden nugget there on the other side. I didn't get into KW Master faculty for like 8 or 10 years. And that would have seemed like the most logical thing, but I just wasn't ready to do that, didn't want to do that. When the right time came along and I kind of explored that, I started to say, actually, you can help people with all the mistakes you've made and some of the things you've learned that have been helpful. Why wouldn't you share that and at least give back to people for all the people that have shared and taught you? And I would just encourage people to keep learning and keep growing. And as long as you do that, your life keeps getting richer and richer.
Well, and we've got no shortage of resources here, right? There's no shortage of resources, coaching, classes, mentorship, masterminds. We have got it all, right? If there's a place that you want to be developed, we've got it. So Mark, I want to thank you for your time. I know as a regional director, life is busy. And we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today, to do this interview. If anybody would like to get in touch with you to have you teach the Leverage Series class or to talk to you about the region, anything in regard to that, how can they reach you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm always happy to do that. It's just my last name, which you can see is Olesh at kw.com. And I'd be happy to help you in any way I could, whether it's a leverage question or teaching the Leverage Series or anything else we have to offer in South Florida.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. And thank you all for joining us on today's My KW Story.
My pleasure.